All right, welcome back to the Contrarians, everybody. We've got a special episode. We have another showcase episode, the series where we interview folks who join our panels and sometimes have their own channels, where we get to know the folks who come on and get to know them a little bit better when we might otherwise not, other than when they're on talking about a specific topic. So today we actually have bicyclelegs with us. Bicyclelegs, how you doing?
Good, good.
Good to see you. I know it's morning time over there for you and nighttime over here for us. So why don't you let us know where you're coming
Yes.
from, actually?
Well, I'm in a city called Logan, which is just south of Brisbane in Australia, in Queensland. Um, so it's middle of summer here as well. That's the other sort of weird difference. We have Christmas in the middle of summer, and but we still have roast at Christmas, so go figure. But yeah, it's a nice place. It's where I've sort of born and bred, so I've grown up here my whole life. Um, yeah,
Awesome. Well, it's good to see you, Bicyclelegs. We're going to get to know Bicyclelegs a little bit better. You might be aware of Bicyclelegs from Bicyclelegs' own channel or even joining our discussions. So I've got a handful of questions that I'm going to ask you.
good.
But when did you first start getting interested in music?
Oh, as a young kid, we had this wonderful TV show in Australia called Countdown, which used to be on I think it was a Sunday night, and it used to showcase all the sort of local talent as well as any international acts that were coming through. And the bands would come on and they would usually lip sync to their latest hit or whatever. And they'd do a countdown of the charts, as the title would suggest, and all that sort of thing. So I had a big sister who's 4 years older than me. So she used to love that show and I used to watch it as a little kid. And the first song I ever remember liking was when I was 6 years old, and it was Mull of Kintyre by Paul McCartney and Wings. But then the first bands I absolutely got into were Devo and Split Enz. And those bands were the first two the first two albums I got for my 10th birthday. I got a vinyl copy of Freedom of Choice by Devo and a cassette copy of Corroboree, also known as Waiata outside of Australia, by Split Enz. And I've been collecting music ever since. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
So you're a collector of music. Do you have a holy
Yes.
grail and do you own it?
Ooh. No, I mean, if I'm a huge Beatles fan, so I mean, the ultimate holy grail for most Beatles fans is a Butcher cover of Yesterday and Today, and you know, an authentic one of those costs thousands of dollars. So I'm probably never going to own that. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of really, really rare stuff, but I just have a lot of music that I really enjoy listening to. So
Explain what the Butcher cover is for some of our viewers.
okay, well, there was a Beatles did an album called Yesterday and Today, which was one of their North American only releases. It was like the North American albums would be shorter than the UK ones, and so they could get more albums, and they would put singles on there as well that weren't on the UK albums. So they created this album called Yesterday and Today, and they did a shot, like a photo shoot for it, where the Beatles were sitting in these like butcher's smocks, and they had like bits of raw meat on them and dismembered baby dolls. It was supposed to be a commentary on the sort of Vietnam War and that sort of thing. But it caused a massive outrage, and stores refused to stock it with that cover, so they had to quickly do another cover for it and recall those ones as much as they could. And in fact, they even sometimes took the Butcher cover and slapped the new cover over the top of it. So there are people there. You can go on YouTube and find videos of how to work out whether you've got one of those covers with the Butcher cover underneath and how to peel it without damaging it, so that you end up with the actual Butcher cover. But yeah, that's, it was a commentary on the war and that sort of thing. And as I say, the stores refused to stock it, and it caused an outrage, so it got recalled. So it's a very, very rare cover, and it goes for thousands of dollars.
Wow, that's fascinating. I knew about like the butcher part of it, but I didn't know that you could actually get versions where they covered it, and you
Yeah.
might have that version. Oh, I didn't know that part of it. That's very cool.
Mm.
So you have your own channel, Bicycle Legs. What made you
Yeah.
decide to? First of all, where does the name Bicycle Legs come from?
Oh, okay. Well, I do actually have a video on my channel which explains this, but to give you the short version of it, um, it was about 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. I was signing up for an eBay account and I needed a username. And I had a username at the time, which I can't even remember now, but it was already taken. And so I needed another username. And my son was a baby at the time. And I was mostly taking care of him. His mother was very ill after he was born. And when I used to change his nappy or diaper, as you call it in America, I used to do this little thing with his legs where I, because I'd heard that that was good for them, good for their joints and that sort of thing. And I used to sing a little song about him having bicycle legs. And so when I needed a new username for eBay, that's what popped into my head. So I've kind of been Bicycle Legs online ever since. And so when I did the channel, it was a sort of pretty obvious name to use. Even though it's not very music related, it's kind of just who I am online. So that's why I went with it.
Wow, awesome story. Did you sell like music on eBay or?
I was mostly buying at the time. I think the very first thing I bought on eBay was a CD copy of Yes's album Talk, because I couldn't find a copy of it here in Australia in a record store for love or money. So I went on eBay and found a copy of it and got it
Nice.
pretty cheap. Yeah. So
Very cool. So when did the channel start?
it was October 2021.
Wow, so it's already been over a year.
Yeah.
Wow, good for you. And like what kind of content do you cover on Bicycle Legs?
It's basically just the sort of music that I really like. So, I mean, I've got a wide uh, taste in music. Um, sort of your classic rock, your progressive rock, but also, my first love musically was new wave. So there's a lot of new wave and 80s music as well. Um, I do topics like I do album ranking shows. I do videos of anniversary albums. That'll be my next, like first video of every month. I do sort of a video where I pick 10 albums that are having a significant anniversary that month and talk about those albums. I do videos where I talk about some of my favorite albums of all time. I also do a series called In Defense Of, where I take albums. It's a bit like the Dark Horse albums shows that Contrarian panels do, where I take an album that, a lot of the critics and the fans really don't like. And I try to say, okay, maybe it's not the best album this band's ever done, but there's actually some worthwhile music on this album and you should give it another listen. The very first video I did in that series was a very notorious album, which was Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Love Beach. And, I will defend that album. The cover is horrendous. They look like the Bee Gees on that cover. But there is actually at least half of that album is worth listening to. So, that's the sort of thing I do on that show. And I've just started doing having people on the channel, and because I started off very much as a solo channel. But now I'm starting to get people on the channel and we're starting to have a few chats. I started a series called Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush, because I realized I was the only one out of all the people I knew, sort of this wonderful community that we've developed at the Contrarians, which is one of the things I love about the Contrarians, is that we've just developed this beautiful community. But I realized that everybody listened to Rush except me. And it was because I had this really bad experience. Like 12, 13 years ago, I used to have this old friend that I worked with, and we used to swap music with each other. I'd give him a CD, he'd give me a CD. He was the one who introduced me to Porcupine Tree, who are one of my favorite bands in the world. I introduced him to Marillion, so on and so on. He gave me the very first Rush album. And I took it home and I listened to it a few times and I was like, that's all right. And I didn't sort of pursue it any further. And then I saw a Contrarians episode last year, I think it was, where that first Rush album was done for a worst album show. And I was like, oh man, I need to give this band another try. So I thought, why not do it as a show on my channel? And I'll get all the people that I know who love Rush to recommend me an album. And I'll go away, listen to it, take some notes, and we'll sort of do a review and a feedback on it. I've done 2 episodes of that so far. I had Grant Arthur on, and he gave me Permanent Waves. And I had Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation on. And, what was the album he gave me? Hold Your Fire. Yeah. And I've got Todd coming on this month, so that'll be fun too. So yeah, that's the sort of content that I'm doing on my channel. I'll be having my first big panel later this month too, which is going to be fun. So yeah.
That story about Rush is so interesting because it's actually kind of, I can identify with it because Rush is a band that I've always known about, but I never delved into their music.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because I like similar bands, similar genres of similar eras. And Rush was one of the first bands I just, like, I was a huge Kiss fan in grade school. I don't want to make this all about me, so I'll just quickly go through this. Like, I was a huge Kiss fan in grade school. There's nothing else other than Kiss. Till about like grade 7 or so, I saw the video for Tom Sawyer on the Canadian Music Channel. And I remember just thinking like, oh, there's other music out there besides Kiss that's really good. But for some reason, I never bought a Rush album. I never got into them. I just know the hits from radio. And in Canada, they play a lot of Canadian music on the Canadian radio. So I know a lot of Rush songs, like from the radio, but I never bought an album. And just recently, I started listening to their albums and trying to get into them more. So we kind of have that in common right now. So that's really cool.
Oh, fair enough. Well, the thing I've tried to explain on my show is that Rush never were big in Australia, ever. Like, you did not hear Rush on the radio. It didn't get played on the music clip shows, all that sort of thing. Apart from that first album that I'd sort of listened to 12, 13 years ago, the only Rush song I knew was Tom Sawyer. And I only knew that from an episode of Futurama that it was in. So, although when I went and listened to Permanent Waves, when Grant gave me that one, The Spirit of Radio, when that first came on, I was like, I've heard this before, but I don't know where, So, it's funny how sometimes you get those subconscious songs in your head that you don't remember hearing. But when it comes back, you're like, I've heard this before.
Yeah, all Fly By Night, Spirit of Radio, Closer to the Heart, they get played on Canadian radio like all the time, or at least in my area. So yeah, I've known about Rush for a long time, but I never bought an album. And I just recently started listening to Rush albums. So but what have you've been doing your show for over a year and a half almost? What have you learned over the last like year and a half? And what has been the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge, I think, is just coming up with, sort of new topics and that sort of thing. Before I started the channel, I've got a notebook. And the first thing I did was like write down as many ideas as I could. And just sort of like, but I think that's sort of the biggest challenge for me. And the new challenge for me is doing these Zoom calls and that sort of thing. Because as I say, I started off very much doing just solo videos for like a year. And now I'm learning, scheduling with people and recording the Zoom calls, and then you know, doing edits where you need to and all that sort of thing. Because I mean, my solo videos, I tend to do them one take. So I try not to, like, except for just sort of like chopping off the beginning and end, I try to do them as a one continuous take and not have to edit them if I can avoid it. So all those sorts of things, you know, little technical things like that. Because I very much run my channel on a shoestring. I'm not, you know, I don't have all the fancy equipment and all that sort of thing. So, you know, I kind of have to make do with what I have. So, I mean, that's a bit of a challenge too. Sometimes I sometimes wish, oh, I wish I had this lovely editing software and a, you know, fancy camera and all that sort of thing. But you make do with what you've got.
Do you have any goals with your channel or even outside your channel? Like, is there anything you want to pursue eventually? Any projects? Could be related to music or not. Like, do you want to put out a book one day? Do you want to, like, do you have any goals or anything you're pursuing that way?
No, I'm just really enjoying doing the channel. I mean, it was always for me about just expressing myself. You know, I've never been sort of, oh, I want to get to, you know, 20,000 subscribers and I want to get this and I want to get, you know, I make videos about what I want to talk about. I don't sort of go and chase topics where I think, oh, this one's going to get X number of views or, you know, what have you. I get very surprised sometimes about which videos of mine end up getting more views than others. And it's like, oh, I didn't think that one would be so popular. But it's very much for me about it. It's a self-expression thing, pure and simple. Just, you know, wanting to talk about me. I felt like when I started my channel, I felt like there were a number of bands that I really loved that most of the music channels I was watching weren't talking about. And so that's why I really wanted to, you know, do things. Like I did a studio albums ranked on a band called Wall of Voodoo. I don't know if you know them at all. They had one radio hit with the song called Mexican Radio. They had a couple of hits here in Australia. Real sort of dark wave kind of music. If you can imagine sort of really dark synth pop meets sort of Ennio Morricone style spaghetti western kind of guitar and that sort of thing. And with their first singer, you've got this guy who's sort of a storyteller and sings a bit like a sort of 80s Johnny Cash kind of thing. It's a fascinating mix of music. I knew that video was not going to get a lot of views. It's one of the least viewed videos on my channel. And I don't care. I wanted to talk about that band. So I did a video on them. So that's really, you know, where I'm at with my channel. It's very much about me talking about the stuff I want to talk about rather than, you know, I'm trying to get X number of subscribers or X number of views or whatever.
Absolutely. It's very commendable. You're providing content even in like a niche way to somebody who loves that band is going to find that, right?
Yeah, well, that's the hope. Yeah.
Absolutely. What's something that you're very contrarian on?
I know that my favorite XTC album is very contrarian, certainly as far as Martin is concerned, because it's None Such from 1992, and he doesn't like that album very much at all. But it's not what a lot of people would pick as an XTC favorite album. But I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty contrarian on Kiss too, because I love early 80s Kiss. You know, I love Unmasked, The Elder. My favorite Kiss album is Creatures of the Night. I love Lick It Up. You know, that period for me is my favorite era of Kiss. So, because I think it's the Kiss I grew up with. You know, so and the thing is, Unmasked and even The Elder to a lesser extent were actually decent. Like Unmasked was huge in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shandy was a top 10 hit. They toured Australia on the Unmasked tour. It was the first time they'd been here. They were selling out, football stadiums. They were just massive. And then even the Elder actually did reasonably well in Australia, whereas it, absolutely tanked in America.
Yeah.
And I think that has something to do with the single, because in North America, the first single was A World Without Heroes, which is a very unkissed song. Whereas the single here was I, which I think is a very Kiss song. I think they would have done a lot better if they'd tried that as their first single in North America too. But yeah, so that's another thing I'm pretty contrarian on. I think is my sort of favorite Kiss period.
Yeah, it's so interesting how like at least those first three albums you mentioned are completely different from one another. Like Lick It Up's kind of similar to Creatures of the Night, other than the album cover. But I mean, like from Unmasked to The Elder to Creatures of the Night, that's almost like could almost be three different bands, even,
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know. I really love that period of Kiss. I mean, the early Kiss always is going to be classic. I mean, that's just the way it is. But those albums, they really sort of connect with me because, as I say, that's when I came into the Kiss world. So,
absolutely. We know that you love music. What's something we don't know about you?
Oh, something you don't know about me. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm also I always wanted to be a musician, but I was just never. I'm one of these people who can play a little bit of a number of instruments, but can't play any one of them well. Like I can play some guitar, I can play some drums, I can play some bass, I can play some flute, but I can't play any of them well. So, yeah.
So you're like the opposite of a Roy Wood, who could play every instrument on the album.
Yeah, absolutely. Or McCartney. He was always my sort of like guy who, he's done albums where he literally played every note on the album. People like that make me sick in a good way.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just going to say, I find that really incredible. People who can do everything on an album and that sort of thing. There's other ones that I could think of. Prince, he used to do that all the time too. So
you recently did an episode with Martin, I think, on post-punk bands. Is that right?
Well, we talked about the three angry young men of British post-punk, and that was Graham Parker, Elvis Costello, and Joe Jackson.
So what was that experience like?
It was wonderful. Martin, I've got to thank Martin because he really challenged me when I asked him if he would come on the channel. Because originally I asked him if he would do one of my Bicyclelegs Discovers Rush episodes. And he was like, "No, I'm sick to death of talking about Rush." Okay, fair enough. So he says to me, come up with 6 topics and give them to me and I might do one of them. So it made me sit down and think, oh, crap. Okay, what are 6 good topics for Martin? And I love the fact that he gave me this sort of homework assignment, as it was, and come up with these ideas for shows. And that was one of the ideas I came up with. And he was like, yeah, I like that one. So we ended up doing that.
Are we going to see the other examples he came up with for shows?
There are a couple of the other ones he was interested in doing. So we're looking at probably doing a studio albums ranked show on a band called Magazine. We're probably looking to do that in February. So yeah, there were a couple of other ones that he was interested in doing, so which I was very flattered by, I must say. I think it's wonderful that he would want to come on a tiny little channel like mine and do a show with me. So it's a great experience. I love Martin. He's very plain speaking, which is great. And he's just so knowledgeable. It really, yeah, it's a great experience.
Awesome. I've got some fun this or that questions. So you can give me either like a short one-word answer, or you can explain your answer a little bit if you want.
Okay.
It's up to you. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Talking Heads or the Cars?
Ooh, I love both bands. I've done studio albums ranked on both of them on my channel. But if pressed, I'd have to go with Talking Heads.
So who would you say, because you ranked the album, so you had a best and a worst album.
Yes.
Who had the best album?
Oh, Talking Heads.
Who had the worst album?
Probably also Talking Heads, funnily enough. Yeah. No, Fear of Music is my favorite Talking Heads album, and that is, that would be a top 20 or 30 album of all time for me, without a doubt.
Could you do a ranking of like your top 10 favorite albums, or is it too hard to pick?
Oh, that would be really, really tough. And it's one of those things that it would change so often too.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to rank them, what I like to do is just do individual episodes on some of my favorite albums. So I'll pick one of my favorite albums of all time and just talk about that for 10 minutes. And I've done a number of episodes like that on the channel so far. The first one I did was on an album that not a lot of people outside of the UK really know, which is an album called Talking with the Taxman About Poetry by an artist called Billy Bragg. Billy Bragg's an interesting artist. If you can imagine a cross between Bob Dylan and The Clash, that's kind of what you're getting with Billy Bragg.
Interesting. Never heard of him. And that album title is a bit of a mouthful. Love Beach or Under Wraps? Jethro Tull.
Again, I've done In Defense Of on both of these.
Yeah.
That's a coin flip, that one. I probably love Beach just because I'm more of an ELP fan than ELP were the very first prog band I ever got into. So I don't know that it's necessarily a better album than Under Wraps, but for sentimental value, I'd probably go with Love Beach.
Fair enough. Roger Waters, David Gilmour, or Syd Barrett?
As leaders of Pink Floyd or as solo artists?
I was thinking leaders of Pink Floyd.
Okay. Well, as leaders of Pink Floyd, I think you can't argue that Roger did the most with the band. So, I mean, Syd's importance cannot be understated because he was the one who got the band going in the first place, and he wrote virtually everything on their first album. But Roger, after that sort of period where I argued that they were kind of leaderless until around about Dark Side or Wish You Were Here, those albums that he did after that, yeah, I mean, Roger was the best leader. As a solo artist, I'd go with David Gilmour because I think I just enjoy his albums the most.
Interesting. Peter Gabriel solo or Phil Collins solo?
Oh, that's an easy one. Peter Gabriel solo. I mean, not to take away from Phil, some of his early albums I really, really enjoy. Face Value, Hello, I Must Be Going. What was the third one? They're really good albums. But seriously, really good album too. But Peter Gabriel is a much more challenging artist musically, I think. He really sort of presses boundaries and does really interesting stuff. Phil Collins is a great songwriter, but his music is, as a solo artist, is quite conventional. So that's why I'd go with Peter Gabriel, because he's definitely more challenging.
Yeah. Are you a Foxtrot kind of Genesis fan or like an Abacab Genesis fan?
I'm a bit of both. When I did my ranking, my favorite album was Nursery Crime. My second favorite was Duke. So, that early Phil Collins three-piece period, Duke, Abacab, even the sort of self-titled album. They're wonderful records. I really, really enjoy them a lot. And I would put them up against some of the Peter Gabriel stuff any day of the week. It's only really later on, sort of Invisible Touch and We Can't Dance, that I think it really was not my cup of tea. So,
which Sparks album cover is better, Propaganda or Indiscreet?
Oh, Propaganda. I love them in the back of the back of the speedboat, tied up and all that sort of thing. Yeah,
that's one of the best album covers ever, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they did some really good album covers, but that one's hard to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold Your Fire or Permanent Waves?
At the moment, I think I like Permanent Waves better. As I said in my Hold Your Fire video, the Permanent Waves grabbed me instantly. Like the very first listen, I was like, "Oh, I like this." Hold Your Fire was much more of a slow burn album for me. The first time I listened to it, I thought, yeah, it's not bad. But as I listened to it more and more, it was like, oh yeah, I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it now. Both really good albums, but I think Permanent Waves was the one that grabbed me instantly, so I'll go with that one.
Nice. I got a few more of those questions, and then I want to ask you about the future of your channel. Does a band need to have a better album cover or a better look themselves? Do they need to look better, or do their album needs to look better?
I think album cover. I don't necessarily want to see the group on the front cover. If they've got a really good idea for a graphic image or whatever, I think, being a guy who listens to a lot of progressive rock, often they didn't appear on their covers at all. They would have some sort of really lovely painting or that sort of thing. And I'd prefer that than to see, four guys on a cover. I mean, if you've got a wonderful image like Kiss, then sure, be at the front of your album covers. But most bands don't look like Kiss. So I'd rather have a nice album cover than the look of the band.
Nice. Devo or Split Enz?
Oh, Devo. I mean, as much as I adore Split Enz, Devo were my favorite band for my whole childhood. And they're still, a top 5 all-time band for me, without a doubt. I love Split Enz to death, though. Don't get me wrong.
Shandy or I Was Made for Loving You?
Oh, Shandy. I Was Made for Loving You is a bit cheesy. I mean, people will say Shandy's a bit cheesy too, but I think it's a beautiful pop song.
I like Shandy too.
I think it's a lovely song, and it has a lovely lyric too. It's not a lot of Kiss lyrics can be very well, I mean, literally they have a title of a song called Love 'Em and Leave 'Em, I think Paul Stanley once said that the most Kiss lyrics were boy meets girl and jumps on her bones. Shandy's not like that. Shandy's a bit more, the tender side of Kiss lyrically, and I like that.
I have a cousin named Shandy.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Shandy's a drink here, so yeah. It's a beer and lemonade.
Well, her name's spelled with a Y instead of an I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's Shandy. It's cool. It's a cool name. Last one. Prequel trilogy or sequel trilogy?
You know what? I'm going to give it to the prequel trilogy just because I really, really like. I really like I love the last movie of the prequel trilogy, Revenge of the Sith, and I really, really don't like the last movie of the sequel trilogy. If you ask me which one has the best movie in it, I would say the sequel trilogy, because I think The Last Jedi is a wonderful film. But I think the prequel trilogy tells a story, the whole way through. Whereas I think the sequel trilogy, because they had different directors, it was a bit like, They started to tell a story, and then the second director, Ryan Johnson, wanted to tell a different story. And then JJ wanted to try and bring it back to the original story. And it just got a bit really cluttered, I think.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So is there any videos that you want to do that you haven't done yet on bicycle legs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to this upcoming panel that I'm going to be doing later this month. We're going to be talking about artists where your favorite album by them is a live album. And I've got like a whole bunch of Contrarians people coming on nice. to do that show, which is, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to doing more sort of, you know, panel shows and things like that on the channel, because it's just something different for my channel, you know. And I'm really enjoying the Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush series, and I'm looking forward to doing more and more of that too. So, I mean, apart from that, I mean, I've got more ideas for sort of studio albums ranked shows and things like that. So I'm just looking forward to doing what I've been doing, really.
Very cool. So other than that, if there's anything you want to plug or let us know where we can find you.
Well, you can find me at Bicycle Legs on Instagram and Twitter, as I always say at the end of my videos. On Instagram, I basically am posting channel updates, and I'm posting the records I happen to be listening to at the time. I just got my first record of 2023, which was an original pressing of Mixed Up by The Cure. Twitter, I tend to talk about all sorts of weird stuff, but I also post my records and my videos and that sort of thing on there as well. If you know, I won't sort of say it directly, but if you know other people from the Contrarians on Facebook, I'm not too difficult to find there. I mean, Marco worked it out pretty easily, so. But yeah, you know, friend requests are welcome. So, and then other than that, obviously, come and have a look at my channel. I've got a ton of content up there. Just search Bicycle Legs on YouTube, and it should be one of the first things that comes up. So
nice. I got one more this or that for you.
Yeah, sure.
The theme song to A View to a Kill or the theme song to The Living Daylights?
You know what? I'd probably go with The View to a Kill. Duran Duran over Aha. It's tough, but I just remember seeing the clip for the View to a Kill theme song over and over again, where they're on the Eiffel Tower and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I'll go with that one.
Awesome. Well, Bicycle Legs, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for being a contributor to our channel and all the wonderful panels that you've been on and all the wonderful musical knowledge you have. And anybody out there who is interested in the types of music that Bicycle Legs has talked about in this video, or other types of music that goes beyond what the Contrarians talk about, because you've talked about some pretty eclectic bands on your channel. So anybody who's interested in that, go check out Bicycle Legs. Very knowledgeable individual, and even if it strays a little too far from the musical likings of yours, go give Bicycle Legs a like and subscribe. It's not going to hurt you none. He's doing this for free. We're all putting free content on the internet for everybody to enjoy. So I'm sure Bicycle Legs will appreciate it if you give him a nice like and subscribe. And other than that, for the Contrarians, thanks for being here, Bicycle Legs.
Thanks for having me, Marco.
Bye, everybody.